Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I'm here with a very bearded Frank.
Wow, Holly, thanks. No one would know
It
otherwise.
looks nice.
Thank you very much. It's gray.
I know. I really like the gray. I think it looks distinguished.
I hear it happens when you turn 40.
So,
What do you mean?
In the glory days, or
What are you laughing about, Holly?
So, how long has your beard been gray then?
Since I turned 40.
Oh,
yeah,
next
that
topic.
long. Yeah, nice topic. Yeah. So, how's your week been?
It's been great. We've been in the new place all week, so we've just been unpacking, and I got a really good news about a job offer that I'll be starting in not this Monday, but the next.
Do you know any particulars about it yet?
I know that I'm really excited.
Good.
I do know some particulars about it, but it sounds like a really great opportunity. It sounds like I'm going to really love the team I'm working on. So I'm excited. It'll be good.
Good. That'll be exciting. And fun.
In honor of Beetlejuice coming out this week, we watched the original Beetlejuice.
Oh, good. Was that just recently? Was that today?
No, we watched it on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah. I know Fictitious Lisa sent a text to everybody saying, be sure and watch it before Saturday afternoon. It's going to go away. She must have purchased it or rented it or something.
Rented it on Prime or something like that. Yeah. I remember watching that when I was very young, and it would get to certain scenes and I would remember that scene. Or like I could just play it in my head. But I didn't remember anything about the plot of what actually
When you played it in your head, was your head natural size or was it small?
Oh, it was small. Shrunken almost.
Shrunken almost. Oh,
almost.
Okay. Cool.
Yikes. Yeah, so I'm excited for that to come out or to see that.
Good.
Are you going to go see that?
If I do, it'll be with Lisa. So probably. If she wants to go, we'll go.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. How was your week this week?
We have been without power.
What?
Yeah, without electricity for a couple of days.
In the house?
No, in the mortuary. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what are you doing for the freezer?
Nothing.
Yikes.
Blowers are still going. So that's good. That's a blessing.
That's a huge blessing. Wow, that's horrible.
We can't stand to be in there. When I left there today, it was 102 degrees, and it probably won't be fixed until Monday or Tuesday. So, the breaker that's out or whatever the issue is, I have half a building that has electricity, the other half does not. Can't seem to find the location, and they say that the problem is something to do with the city. So the city hopes that they'll have it fixed by Tuesday or Monday of next week. So
wow, that's a huge inconvenience.
It's huge. Did I tell you the temperature when I left today?
Yeah, what, 102?
102.
Yeah, and that's insane.
I can just sit there for a few minutes and I'm just drenched in sweat.
Yeah.
So it's not very good.
Oh my gosh.
When people want to come in, I just say, let's do it on the phone, okay? I've got a little bit, and unfortunately the side that's black controls the air conditioning unit, of course.
Sure,
so, yeah. So that's the problem.
Oh
anyway,
my gosh.
Yeah, it's fine. But other than that, let's see. We've had a couple more babies. And we had one with a service, which was good. That just happened yesterday. But it was good. It's been all right. It's been all right. It's just regular functioning working of the mortuary. So Caden's liking it too. How's school going for Caden?
Oh, it's great. Yep, he's really liking his classes, and we were just talking about it a couple couple days ago, and he said, "This is the first time in my life that going to school, the days just fly by."
Well,
Yeah, so he's really enjoying it.
hmm. Well, they would fly by since that's all he was really doing. I mean,
I
he's
know,
immersed. He's immersed in school. That's it.
right. So
So,
he's really liking it, and he really likes the subject material. He'll talk to me about cases and everything that they're examining, that are learning that week, and it goes over my head, but I say, "That's great."
hmm, fantastico.
Fantastico. But I
Yeah,
guess
that's
that
Spanish for fantastic, which is English for fantastic.
which is English for fantastico.
Oh yeah, darn it! I should have thought of
God.
that.
Hey, that's something else too, is our community, our town is doing
Yeah.
this initiative where they're doing free classes for if you live in the town. And one of them is learning Spanish, so I'm gonna go to that one.
Oh, nice. And it's all
Yeah.
free of charge to the community.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yep. So I'm gonna go. There are 8 people in my class. They texted and canceled class this week because they hadn't found a teacher yet. So maybe I'll get Kane to teach it.
On that same levels, Holly, I there's something interesting and weird that I learned this week that I did not know before. And
Uh-huh.
there's a cemetery in our town that anyone living within 2 miles radius of that cemetery can't be buried there.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
that's what I said. What? Why? Well, because they haven't died yet, Holly.
Because they haven't died yet?
That's correct. They're still
Oh
living
my.
at they're living within that 2 mile radius of the cemetery.
Oh.
Okay.
So
That's
if
what we
they've
do.
died within the 2-mile radius,
That's what
feel
we do
free.
in
Come
our
on over.
that's what we do in our community, Holly. Is
Oh my gosh. So sorry, you're
anyone
not welcome
living
here.
sorry. Mm-hmm.
We can't bury you.
Yeah, no way.
We just can't do it.
Not gonna
We won't
happen.
do it.
Don't ask.
We've gone through lawsuits. We're not doing it again.
Oh, that bell is still ringing. Which means he's still alive
You're
under there.
scratching
Dang it, I thought for sure
almost.
he'd be dead by now.
Yeah, shoot. But with all that, let's go ahead and be frank.
Thanks. I want to share something with you that happened a little bit odd and kind of spooky. So, those of you that have the opportunity to do so, get some popcorn, get nested in a comfortable
Ooh,
chair, turn down the lights just a little bit, because this is a story that's going to be very weird for most of you.
great.
So, what you say with a
Um,
smile? Great.
great. Hold on, let me go get some popcorn. You can wait just 3 minutes for me.
Hey, are your lights on? Are your lights on dimmer? Can you dim them,
Oh my
Holly?
gosh, I can dim the lights.
If you want to, that's fine. I'm going to
Uh,
continue.
yeah, sure.
So I'm going to tell you the story basically of a individual that was probably the oldest one that I'd actually considered or even seen up to this point. And I think he was right around 106 years old.
Ooh,
And before I tell you the story, there's a couple of background information, pieces of information that I wanted to share anyway. And so I'm going to share 4 steps of mummification with you prior to this episode.
oh my.
Not prior to the episode, but during the episode. So there are now, Holly, have you ever seen that movie?
The mummy.
No, no,
Hmm.
Monty Python's
Minor Python and the
Holy
Holy
Grail.
Grail?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what did they do? They had in their community, they had someone that would go around with a wagon, and what was his comment?
Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead.
That's exactly right. And so the number one step with regards to mummification is announcing the death.
Sure.
And so a lot of times people would either close friends or family members would go ahead, and once someone passes away, they would go through the community announcing verbally that someone had passed away. Interesting side note: the individuals that actually did the mummification process were actually trained and eventually became known in the English language as embalmers. So
Oh.
mummification is in fact a type of embalming. And another interesting side note is when we think about mummification, where do we think about first?
Egypt.
Egypt. But do you realize that the first mummifications, according to data or to DNA records, actually took place in Chile?
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow, I
so
didn't know
very
that.
interesting. Yeah. But I think the Egyptian religious and secular traditions made it a much more popular and more evident as to what was actually going to take place and could take place with regards to the deceased human body. So the first step is to go ahead and notify individuals that that someone has passed away. Excuse me. The second step is actually in connection to the initial preparation to begin with. First of all, they would take the individual, carry the individual to the Nile River, and then wash the body. Now, why would you wash the body, Holly?
I could see that for religious purposes. I could also see that just for practical reasons. You want the body to be as clean as possible before you start the mummification. I mean, I guess you want to preserve as much as you can. So I
Yeah,
would think that it would help to have the body completely clean or as
right.
clean as possible.
Right. So it becomes a purification process. In Egyptian, the word is ibu, IBU. And so it becomes a purification process, not only to relieve or to release the dirt and whatever ailments or scales or whatever might be on topically on the body itself, but it
Yeah.
actually helps the individual being as clean as possible. And then they actually dress the individual with different scents or herbs, spices. They wash the body down. The step 3, and there's 8 of them, but I'm only going to do the first 4 this time. And then
Okay.
we may get, and it depends on how well the episode goes, but there's a specific reason why I'm getting to step 4. So
Okay.
step 3 is what would you consider the most important organ of the body in the mummification process that you want to keep?
Is it the
So,
heart?
yes, the
Really?
heart is one organ that they would want to keep in the body at all times.
That's
So the
sweet.
next, so when it's a loving gesture, Holly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So cute.
So uh, um, the organ that I'm talking about is the brain, and the brain in the mummification process is not an important organ. It's they not easily, but they remove it and they discard it. Now then, I want to just go into the process on how they removed it. Do you want to
Yeah.
know?
I was just going to ask that.
So they had a little scoop-shaped spoon, or it was
Like a
kind of
melon
elongated.
baller?
A what?
A
A
melon baller?
It could be, yeah. That's kind of close to it, actually, when you look at it.
Ew.
And so what they would do is they would insert that up into through the nostril and break the, I guess, the nasal areas and areas that create the sense of smell.
Uh-huh.
What is that called? It's the anyway. They would break through it, and then they would just gradually scoop and pull it
Oh
out
my
and
gosh,
discard it
really?
until it was gone, until they couldn't scoop anymore, and then they would just go ahead and discard that little piece of organ fragment that they were actually getting to. Then they would take they would do a small little incision on the left hand side of the abdomen, lower portion of the abdomen, and then slowly but surely remove organs.
Hmm.
And they would try and remove everything. So we're talking kidneys, livers, intestines, lungs, and then they would go ahead and try and save the heart. And if they disturbed the heart and inadvertently pulled it from the body, they would immediately place the heart back into the chamber and cavity of the body itself. So
Hmm.
that's how important it was to have the heart left in there. Now, if I told you canopic jar, what would you say that is? Do you know what that means? Do you know what
Canopic jar. No.
canopic jar?
Is it the jar in which they hold all of their organs?
Yes, and there are
Oh.
four. There are 4 specific jars, and I would love to get it. I mm, it would be too freaky probably for Lisa to have in the house, but I would love to have a set of those canopic jars.
As
Yeah.
long as you just tell her these are just decoration. They don't have any specific purpose.
Uh-huh. And I know that you've seen them. And for those of you that are coffiners listening to this episode, go ahead and Google canopic jars, and you'll see there are 4 distinct ones. And I've in the book I actually wrote them down as far as what they mean. So can I read that for just a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit? Okay, so they're four canopic jars. They are the children. They represent the children of Horus, Horus, and each one has a specific reason to be designed and developed. So the canopic jars are these. The number one is the Hoppy, Hapy, and that is a baboon-headed jar that holds the lungs.
Hmm.
So keep that in mind because that's one we want to talk about. The second one is it's called IMSET, IMSET, and that is a human-headed jar that's designed to protect the liver. And we can only guess what each of the heads represent for the jar itself. I don't know. This is
Yeah.
just what was happening here. The liver in the IMSET jar, and then in the baboon-headed jar, the lungs. The third one was a duomutif jar, and that
Hmm.
was designed to hold the stomach. And I would guess, anything that would go along with the stomach, not the intestines, because they went into the fourth jar. And
Oh,
the fourth jar is called and I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to try the Kebesenuf jar, and that was designed to hold the intestines, and that had um, a jackal. Is it a jackal? Oh,
yes.
falcon headed jar.
Oh,
And so that would hold the intestines. Okay, so now we have a kind of that was step 4 in the embalming process. And now when these organs were placed into these jars, they would place natron, which is a salt-based product that was heavily available in Egypt at the time, and it would just be placed on the organs to actually help dry the organs out. Either they would be kept in the canopic jar, which is part of the religious ceremony, which keeps the spirit close enough to the body that they can be reunited later. There are
yeah.
two names, and I have to say this now, otherwise I'm going to forget it if we go back to it. Ka is actually is a spirit that leaves the body but lingers. So that's
Hmm.
Ka. The Ba is a spirit that actually will leave the body but continue and come back night after night to continue to feed off the body.
Interesting.
Any energies that it had. So Ka is the energy that was initially placed with the body that would separate from the body when the individual passes away. And that's the energy that this mummification process is trying to keep to the body, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. So they're preserving every individual organ as best they can so that that spirit can come back and have something to draw off of and
Right.
continue living.
And so as we go into the other steps of the embalming process, you'll understand why, because it becomes a religious facet to the Egyptian community. Number one, they want the spirit when it becomes time. And it's a 70-day process, just so people know.
Wow.
It's not an overnight thing. It takes 70 days, 40 days preparation of organs, and then additional 30 days for the preparation of skin and inner workings of the human body with the packing and treating and the ceremonies that go along with it. And it's very interesting. So I think we should go ahead and talk about those later. But it's very interesting to know exactly what it is that transpires. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about before we get into the meat of this episode is that the reason for all of this preparation work to happen and to come around is so that the spirit Ka would recognize its own body and then
Hmm.
reunite itself after that 70-day process so that it could continue to live. Now, what are some of the things, and I'm just off the tangent here just a little bit. There was food products that were found in tombs, amulets, little things that were placed with the sarcophagus and the mummified body, and that's because the spirit Ka during that 70 days needed something to eat, and
Oh,
so
wow.
that's why the food was kept there. And people still kind of do that today, not with regards to mummification, but it becomes a place. It becomes
Santa,
it becomes
cookies.
it becomes a time for gathering together and being able to eat. Right, that's
Yeah.
what you want to do. So, okay, now we go back to our 107-year-old man. So, they had mentioned to me that he had a crypt. And now we know what a crypt is. It's an individual space that a casket is placed into within a bigger building or place called a mausoleum.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had mentioned this mausoleum, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I've been in that mausoleum only 2 other times. And the mausoleum, I'm going to tell you, is huge.
Oh, really?
You wouldn't recognize, and it's an enclosed mausoleum. So none of the crypts have faces that face the outside of the building. You actually have to go inside the building to actually either pay homage or respect to someone that's passed away and who's been placed in one of these crypts. So the day of the service came, and it was just a normal service, nothing major. Very interesting. And some of the things that someone had outlined, things that were in existence when he was born, and things that he had witnessed throughout his life because of him living 106 years old. And some of the things that came up, you just think, what? You just think, was that long ago? Or, could you think, let's say, for instance, okay, bread. This is an easy one. Sliced bread.
Sliced bread.
Sliced bread is pretty modern.
Yeah.
It just happened. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years, but maybe 50 years ago, they didn't have sliced bread.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden you're looking and thinking to yourself, as things are being mentioned, you're thinking, wow. And that's something that I've always taken for granted because it's always been around ever since I've been alive. So right. Cars, TVs,
mm-hmm.
radio, there's a lot of different things. Anyway, that being said, so we load the casket into the car. I made sure the pin was in the back of the
yeah. Didn't want another incident.
And so we make our way to the cemetery where this huge mausoleum is kept. And as I approached it, there was a gentleman standing out front, and I recognized him immediately as a friend of mine that I hadn't seen for years. And he was the manager of this mausoleum. He was the caretaker of this mausoleum. And so he greeted us at the main doors. We unloaded, of course. And just so you know, as soon as if you could think and picture an old, like Transylvanian castle, and where it's dark and damp on the inside, but on the outside they have little fixtures for like torches. Mm-hmm. But there's no torches there, but there's fixtures there for them.
Right.
This just tells you how old this mausoleum is. And so the doors are I guess a double wide door, and each door is probably 4 to 4.5 feet wide, and they would open up, and you just get a little creaking sound. Yeah, kind of, yeah. And big circular iron rod knockers that you bang on the door so that if someone again, I'm just looking at this and I'm for the first time in my life, for the third time visiting, I'm finally focusing on what it is I'm entering into.
Right.
So he opens the doors, and he doesn't have to prop them because they're so heavy. They just stay open. Mm-hmm. The light from the outside shines into the building and only goes about 23 feet, maybe 50 feet. And then it's black.
And I mean, it's so old that it's not like they have electric lights in there.
No, but they had put in motion sensor lights.
Okay.
So as you go in, and I don't know how they were powered because they didn't have solar at the time. I don't know how they were. Been
batteries.
Could have been. Yeah, that's probably true. Okay. So as we're walking through, there's the first little entryway, and I have to describe it to you just so you understand exactly what we're talking about. But as I go into this crypt, immediately on the right-hand side, there's a wide circular area. And if you looked at the wall, you're seeing all these crypts, and they're probably about maybe 12 crypts stacked on top of one another, but they're in a circular mode. And so so you go in and you can just kind of a panoramic view of the whole thing, and you can see all sorts of. Now, remember the mausoleum that I talked about last week or the previous episode was actually, I think it was only 8.
Uh-huh.
So now we're looking at
huge.
Yeah, we're looking at close to 30 feet up. And so as I continued on, he just, first of all, the niceties with my friend.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, he started to wave me forward to come in. And as we got a little bit deeper, and this is where I would say the light from the outside stopped. So now we just did a slight incline or decline, and I knew we were on a decline because the casket started to pick up speed. Because it's on wheels, we're rolling it, and it started to pick up speed. nothing terrible happening here, Holly. So I grabbed the handle and I just started kind of pulling it back just a little bit. But the ground was such that as you moved that cart along, it almost felt like you were on cobblestone because it would bounce almost every inch. There was a bounce to the cart that the casket was on. Then we came to another kind of leveled off area where both sides had a huge circular area again with these mausoleum, with these crypts.
Mm-hmm.
And again, about the same height. And I'm thinking to myself, how far down into the ground did we just travel?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. And so to my right, there's this big circular area, but in the center of the circular area, there is a table. And it's a big round table. Now, on this table, there was an old style rotary dial telephone. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So next to that rotary style table or phone, there was a ledger book that had been laid out on the table, which carried the names of individuals.
Everyone in the mausoleum.
That is correct. It was the Death Book of Life. Or is that a oxymoron? The Book of Life.
I think so, but I liked it.
Okay. Whatever it is. And then next to that was like a small little candelabra. And it had candles in there that were lit. So
they were already lit?
They were lit. And I said to my friend, I said, so you light candles? He said, yeah, just when you have services because it gives additional light.
Yeah.
But next to that, there were 4 inverted upside down flashlights.
Okay.
So now he reaches over and he grabs a flashlight and they're sitting on the lens side. So you got the column or the place that holds the batteries up in the air and it's sitting on the lens. So he reaches over and grabs a flashlight. He said, here, you're going to need this. What? What? He said, I'll take one. And he said, I'll take one. And then who's the immediate next of kin, the closest kin to the deceased? And a son raised his hand who was 80.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
hands the flashlight to his son.
Jeez.
And he said, the rest of you, please stay close together and in kind of a single file line because we're going to be going into the narrowing spaces of this mausoleum.
Oh my gosh, I want to go in there so bad.
So now I'm thinking it's not open to the public. You have to prove that someone is
someone in there
buried. Mm-hmm. And so it's not. You can look at it from the outside, but unless you know of someone buried in that or placed in that mausoleum, you're not allowed to go in. So here we are. We're now traveling down once again a little bit more of a decline in the flooring. And again, the floor is the same, cobblestone area, stuff like that. And finally, after about, I would say that we have walked into this mausoleum about 20 minutes. Walking forward.
Walking forward for 20 minutes.
Yes. And
was it going down the whole time?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And so finally we got to a space where it opened up and he said, now flash your lights along the walls. And so we were flashing the lights along the walls. And I'm looking at, I'm focused on some of the names and some of the dates that are placed on the crypt because I'm interested in how long this place has been in existence and who the oldest burial was.
Yeah.
At least in that area. And apparently he couldn't tell me. My friend couldn't tell me. But he said, yeah, no, just go ahead and take a look. But as we scanned our lights around, there was this open crypt. And so I knew this was where this man was to be placed. And they had a old style crank lift.
Oh my gosh.
So apparently every circular vestibule area had that lift. And it was built along the side of the wall, or there was a place built inside the wall that would allow that to just kind of tuck away. No one would know it was there unless you were actually looking for it. So he wheels this thing out. We place the casket on it, and then there's 2 of us like you're sawing down a tree, but back and forth, back and forth.
Cranking.
So he would crank one way, I'd crank the other, and it would just keep going up and up and up. He was on level, if I remember, it was probably about level 7. And so we finally got to that point, and then he had to lean a ladder up against the crypt wall in order to climb up close enough to the casket, and then would just casually, slowly, because if you move too fast, how I likened it to a canoe where you're rowing along. If you row too fast on one side, you're going to turn, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to go too fast when you're pushing the casket back into this crypt, because you might push it off the lift. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was very careful and casual about placing the casket in there. Finally, it got in there, and the family asked about the marble front. What's happening with that? And they said, yeah, they have workers that would come back and go ahead and place that front on the crypt itself. So we had a small little service after he was placed in the crypt. We put the lowering device, or that device, back into its place or carriage or storage spot. And I look to my right as I'm looking and wielding this light around. I see another table, and this time it has kind of the same setup as the one before, only this time the candles are not lit. The book is on the table, and there's nothing in the book. And I'm just looking at it and thinking, what in the world is going on with this? Now, we go ahead and we're getting ready. We have the prayer, the committal service there, and we've all 4 of us who have flashlights have our lights on the minister, who I think at this point is pretty shaken. And he, he said, kind of show me, put it on the book so I can read it. So one's got a light on there, and then the only thing I could keep thinking, Holly, was that maybe I should just put a light up under his chin, because that would be really
gosh.
because that would be really cool. So here we are enough into the crypt that I'm thinking, okay, so now I can just go ahead and collapse the device that held the casket. We're just, my lift, the what was carrying the casket to the crypt site.
Okay.
So from the funeral car to the crypt site. And so I collapsed it and was just kind of wheeling it on because we were ready to go. And no one stayed. And usually people will linger after services, but this time they did not. They just immediately turned around, grabbed for a light.
Well, they're going, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah, we want to get out of here. So as we're going back up this little slight incline, we get to that first. Now, remember, we'd passed through 3 areas where there were circular areas and tables. So we get back up to the first one where I had noticed the candles. Now, upon further review of that room, I noticed the what I call the canopic jar.
Oh.
And it had Hoppy on there, HAPY.
And that was the first one. So that's the liver?
No, it was the lungs.
The lungs. Okay.
So it's very important that you remember that, because as we continue through this episode, you'll refer back to the lungs.
Yeah.
So that was the baboon-headed jar. And again, coffiners. And I'll try and get one off the internet, but they're all over the internet, canopic jars and whatever.
I looked them up. They're really cool.
Oh, you did? They are cool. And so maybe you'll put one on your Instagram post.
Yeah, we'll put it on the Instagram.
So this baboon jar, which was designed to hold the lungs, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I wonder why a canopic jar is in here. And where are the other 3? You know, if you're going to have one, why don't you have all 4?
All 4, yeah.
Yeah, because that means that obviously the spirit's not going to be able to, and I don't know if it's a real one. I really don't know. But you look at the ambiance of the mausoleum itself and its age. Why wouldn't you have a real one in there? Or one that's...
Aren't they meant to stay together?
They are meant to stay together.
So that spirit can find
recognize the body. Yeah. And so... Anyway, there's this canopic jar, and I thought to myself, well, I didn't see that the first time, and it was on the table. It's just that it didn't register with me. And so as I went back by, and I looked at my friend and I said, "Why do you have a canopic jar on the table?" He goes, "It's very interesting. story behind this canopic jar is that it was actually from an archaeologist that did a, what is it?
Dig.
A dig in
Mesopotamia.
could be. I can't remember the name. It starts with an MES. And so, and so it probably was that area. And so anyway, he knew that I was in the funeral industry, and he said, "Hey, would you mind keeping this? Do you want to keep this?" And he said, I took it, and he said, I put it in the mausoleum only because that's where death is, and maybe it would help somebody. And then he looks at me and he goes, when he handed it to me, he said, be aware, there are some weird occurrences happening with this jar.
Oh, so he's just trying to pawn it off. That's
exactly what my friend said. And he said, so he just wanted it out of his realm of visibility, his realm of ability to go ahead and touch it, seize it, hold it, whatever the case might be. He just wanted
space.
That's right. He just wants it out of his space. And I said, so has anything weird happened since you've been here? And he goes, come back and we'll talk. I said, oh, okay. Now we're talking. And so we made our way to the door, and the door was still open. And it was very interesting how your eyes will dilate, and you just, oh man, you get that sun blindness after coming out of darkness. And you just think, oh man, my eyes need to just focus faster. So I went back to the mortuary after saying goodbye to the family. And again, they got in their cars and they were gone. But I did an interesting thing. I walked outside the mausoleum, and it's very high at the doors where you go in. But then as you walk along the side, you can actually see a small slope of the roof line going into the ground.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like an angled building coming, like it's shooting up right out of the ground. But then we went, and I know now that we were going underground when we were going to place this 106-year-old man in the crypt. Other interesting note with crypts is that they're designed and built so that if there's any leakage from the bodies that are placed there, it's actually channeled to another area, possibly to the outside, but usually they have collector areas within the mausoleum that they'll go ahead and come in and clean. Wow. So that's just a side note and has nothing to do with this story.
That's really thinking ahead.
Yeah. So I got in the car and I drove back to the mortuary, and I talked to an older gentleman that was at the mortuary, and I said, have you ever been to that mausoleum? He said, yeah, I have a couple of times. It's very interesting. There was a lot of history there. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think he said there was like 40,000 crypts in that mausoleum.
What?
And it wouldn't surprise me because we didn't go all the way into it. I mean, if I look down, there was still a walkway going down.
Yeah.
And so we only went, I think, to a portion of it. And so, anyway, when he said that, I go, that can't be right. In my mind, 40,000 is a lot.
There's no way. Yeah.
That's a lot. And so, as he was talking to me, he said, yeah, it was designed and built way before this area even became a state. It's over 180 years old. And,
wow.
And he said everyone that lived in the area was always placed there. They never had a cemetery. It was always in the mausoleum, and it was being
just
built.
A mausoleum.
And it was being built as people needed it. So there are sections to the mausoleum, mausoleum. And so anyway, okay, I thought that a lot about it. I said, what do you know about the canopic jar? He said, there's no canopic jars in there. Yeah, there is. There is one. And I saw it. And he goes, no, why would he have a canopic jar in there without the other three? Because being trained in the mortuary science, you actually have to be, you talk a little bit about mummification, and you learn a little bit about mummification. And we actually, in our school, we called him Henry, leaning up against the wall, and he'd been mummified. And he was there, and he'd been there for as long as the school had existed. I think it was the first embalming they had done, and they decided they would do it as mummification as opposed to regular chemical injection. So if I told you this as well, Holly, just another side note with regards to mummification, there's two separate styles of mummification, and one is chemical, one is natural. So when they unearth a huge mammoth that still has hair attached, that's mummification because of the environment that the mammoth was placed into, froze to death and froze deep enough and long enough that that wasn't done externally by man, but by nature. And so that is
the natural mummification.
That's right. That's a natural mummification. And
cool.
So that's why they always, and that's the detriment to that one would be the fact that they'll eventually thaw.
And so and then they're going to decompose.
Yeah. And so that's why they take every opportunity available to keep them as frozen as possible, just for study. And anyway, just that's another side note. Anyway, let's get back to the canopic jar. So I called my friend and I said, hey, I'd really like to come by and take a better look at your mausoleum, if that's okay. And he said, yeah, I invited you over. Let's go ahead and take a look.
I just have a question. Is this you being just interested in it, or are you trying to investigate like what's going on with this canopic jar?
Probably both. Because I just, because, I think mainly it's because I was mainly interested in the canopic jar, only because I'd heard about them, read about them, seen them in photos, but I had never really seen one.
And so this one was kind of interesting because it was only the one.
Yeah. And as we talked, it talks about the lungs. I mean, right? That's what it's designed to hold, was the lungs. So we set up an appointment to go forward and talk about what had transpired with regards to the passing of this individual that was 106 years old. My questions regarding the canopic jar, if there was any weird experiences that had actually taken place within the mausoleum. And so he said, the only thing he said, and we were standing in the room, candles were lit, that phone was still on the table. And he goes, and the book was still on the table, which my friend, not my friend, but the deceased name was now added to that book.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just sitting there talking, and we were sitting around the table talking.
Oh.
And the flames are going, and the doors have been closed to the outside. And so all we really have is the flame lit light or ambience, because we didn't turn the flashlights on. And so we just had the candles that we were sitting there talking around. And all of a sudden the candles flickered.
Oh no.
And I looked at him and I said, I didn't really think much about it, and neither did he, but
there's no breeze.
There is no breeze. And I will talk to you about this in just a moment. And I'm sorry about this episode going long. We may have to cut it in two parts. I was sitting there talking with him, and he talks to me about this experience that actually transpired. And he said that one particular day, because he's the caretaker, remember, so he's in that mausoleum all day.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he does it, because my eyes would be bugging out. It would be going absolutely crazy. So he said one day he was walking down in the depths of the mausoleum, and he said he stepped in what felt like water. And he said, oh no, we shouldn't have water in this part of the mausoleum. And so he grabbed, his flashlight, he starts looking at the walls, and he sees fluid coming down the side of the wall.
Oh my God.
And he said, and he looked at it and he goes, it was clear fluid. And then he just traced it with his light beam from the crypt going down the wall to the floor. And he could see where it was drawing from the crypt onto the floor, and it was pooling right there. So he goes, oh crap. And he said, these crypts are old enough that there shouldn't be any leakage from bodies.
No, they're decomposed enough. There's nothing leaking anymore.
Yeah, there should be no drainage at all from this area. So he went back up the long walk. He said it takes him about 30 minutes to walk from one end clear to the other end to, actually, when he does his inspections, he says it takes me about 30 minutes to walk to the far end of the mausoleum. And then he said it takes me about 4 hours by the time he goes through every aspect of the mausoleum.
Wow.
So he does that once a day. But this particular time, he walked back up to grab some soaking materials so that he could go ahead and find out what exactly it was that was leaking. And sure enough, it was water, he said. But he said the interesting thing is that when I walked past, or when I was carrying these water-soaked rags and stuff out in the depths, and he said the air gets so thick that it's hard to breathe. And he
Stale
said,
air too. There's no
yes,
movement.
yes. And he said, not 1 week after putting that canopic jar in that front vestibule or visiting area, he said a breeze, for the first time in my life, a breeze went over my face. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, a breeze. That far deep into the mausoleum, there's no breeze. And
No.
he said, there's no way of air transferring and traveling. And I said, oh, because there's no exit door once you get down that low. If there was a fire, oh, heaven forbid. But I don't know what would burn anyway.
Yeah.
But he said down there, I felt a breeze not only hit my chest, but blow across my face. And he said it was so weird for me, I had to stop. And then he
Yeah,
said, and
because
then all of it, go ahead.
no, I'm just thinking how creepy it would be just to put yourself down that far and to realize, like, I am alone down here. There is
Yep.
no airflow. And it's such a normal thing, feeling a breeze across your face. But in that scenario, be like, what is
Yeah.
happening?
Yep. No breeze. And so anyway, he had a breeze. And so he said he picked up his pace, but that his senses had heightened enough to the degree that he was now listening for every little sound.
Oh, I'm
And he
sure. I'm
said,
sure he's got adrenaline going.
mhm. And he said, as I was watching, getting closer to where we sit now, he said I could hear it tapping, like a little drip of water that seemed to be
Uh-huh.
following me. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
go, so what did you do? And he goes, I got out of here. I said, have you had any experiences since? He said, I've never gone back down that far.
Oh,
And I said, what if you have a flood down there? He said, there's no flood. He said, I've been down there one other time. It's as dry as can be. No leaking from the wall.
so
And I
it was
said,
leaking
okay,
from the
so
wall. Was it leaking from like a specific crypt or
he
it
said
was
it was,
just straight from the wall?
well, it was down from the crevice. So he couldn't tell where
Uh,
it was coming from because it was from the highest point of the crypt and it
uh-huh.
was just leaking down the wall. So he didn't know where it originated from. He didn't
Right.
really care. So we notified the personnel that owned the crypt or the mausoleum, and they said, just let it go. It's probably just a fluke. So
Yeah.
anyway, while we're sitting there talking, again, these flames they flicker. And usually they're just straight up. You know, a candle will just burn on a flame by itself, and it just looks like an extended flame. And it's beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
But then when they start to dance, neither one of us felt any air. No breeze whatsoever when those candles started to flicker. And I went like this, and and I said, "Do you mind if can I do something?" And he said, "Yeah, go ahead." And so as I'm running my hand around the flame, trying to
I would do
figure
the
out
same thing. Yeah.
where the breeze is coming from, I didn't feel a thing until I stopped and went like pulled my hand back over the flame, and then there was a breeze coming from the top of the flame.
Oh,
And I
so
thought,
it was coming down onto the
yeah,
flame.
coming down onto the flame, and I just looked up, trying to see if there was any opening in the building at all for the flame to be flickering. And when I felt the breeze on the top of my hand, I looked at the flame and they were still flickering. So I put my hand down and I go, hey, and I almost give his name. I looked at my friend and I said, do you know what kind of canopic jar that is? He said, no. And I said, it's a lung.
Lungs.
Do you think that maybe whoever's lung was in that canopic jar is now with you here in the mausoleum and they're making those? Because you said you felt breeze.
Yeah,
Do you
you
think
felt
that you
air.
felt that? Yeah, you felt that breath. Do you think that was a breath? Do you think that was a him passing by you? Do you think these flames are now dancing because of that breath from the canopic jar? And he goes, I've never really thought about it. And he said, and so he did some fast research on it. I said, would you mind if I came back another time and I want to see you? And you and me are going to go down a little bit deeper into the mausoleum. And there's one area that I felt really weird about when we brought this body in that I want to take a look at specifically. So, wow, Holly, I'm looking at the time right now, and I think this story has to continue, or at least the second episode or the second experience has to be told in in the conjunction of being with my friend and going deeper into the mausoleum. But because of the time constraint, I think maybe it would be best if we broke this episode up into two different parts. And so we're going to leave that. We're going to
Ooh.
leave that right there as a cliffhanger. So, Coffiners, if you want to hear what happened in the second episode with regards to going deeper into the mausoleum, come back. Come back and see us. Come back and hear us.
See us. Oh my gosh, don't be too upset with us, but part 2 is coming. And
I'm sorry about the length of this first one. I didn't realize it would, I mean, I get to talk and telling stories, and it goes.
It goes.
So, yeah, sorry about that.
But come back next week for our second part, and check out our Instagram. Check out or email us at letsbefrank@coffintalking.com. And we will see you next week with part 2.
Bye, Coffiners.